Welcome, USC students and alumni, to our first ever Sustainability Careers Networking Night with alumni. My name is Lori Shreve Blake, and I'm the Senior Director for Career Engagement at the USC Career Center. This event is a partnership between the USC Career Center, the USC Sustainability Office, and the USC Alumni Association. And we're so pleased to kick off Earth Month a few days early, which officially starts Saturday, April 1st. USC will be hosting many Earth Month events, and Ellen Dux, who's our moderator for this evening, her office, the Sustainability Office, has all of those events listed on her website, and we'll be putting that in the chat and also mentioning that at the closing. We'll have two raffles this evening. Esther Lanier will pick the winners tomorrow morning, but we will be raffling off 2 gift cards to Dolce, and students will need to stay the entire 2 hours of the event, and then those students will be put in a raffle for the Dolce gift cards. Esther Lanier will give those people who wins, you'll be notified on Friday. Okay, and so now another little housekeeping thing. The bios of the alumni that are here this evening, we thank all of them. I think there's like 12 or 13 that we have this evening who stepped up and volunteered when we said we wanted to have this event. And so we thank them for sharing their expertise with us this evening. And so they will be in breakout rooms after the panel discussion. And so we'll have a first kind of 1 hour of the panel discussion with our expert moderator, Ellen, and then you'll move into the breakout rooms and you'll be able to use the taskbar option in Zoom and be able to move between room and room and join the very interesting and rich conversations. And then we'll join back again here, 5 minutes to 8 p.m. Pacific time, 7:55 p.m. for some quick closing remarks. And this particular webinar is being recorded, so it will be on the Career Center's YouTube channel. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our esteemed panel for this evening. Our first panelist is Marissa Tyshawn. And Marissa is the Conservation Projects Implementation Lead at Boeing. Marissa manages environmental projects by enrolling diverse internal and external stakeholders to set and achieve objectives for complex sites, mitigating technical, financial, and litigation risks, ensuring compliance, and reducing environmental liability. Our second speaker for this evening is Daniel Atwater. And Daniel is a senior advisor at the LA office overseeing financial communication, business development, corporate strategy for organizations with a combined base of over 300 billion in assets under management as an advisor with Venesco Capital. Daniel is responsible for developing international infrastructure, project opportunities, along with strategic growth initiatives for the Circular Economy Company and its affiliates. He's a passionate advocate for inclusive economic development. Daniel has served in association leadership positions with the National Investor Relations Institute, the Regional Hispanic Chamber of Commerce Financial Advisory Board, the USC Black Advisory Council Board, the Chinese Enterprise Council, and others. Daniel holds a master's degree in corporate communications management from the University of Southern California, right on, and a bachelor's degree from California State University, Los Angeles, where he currently serves as adjunct professor since 2012. Our next panelist, alumna that we want to introduce is Caitlin Martin, who is ESG specialist at Williams-Sonoma. Caitlin Martin is an environmental, social, and governance ESG specialist at Williams-Sonoma Incorporated, where she leads the corporate ESG strategy and external communications of the company's sustainability initiatives. Prior to WSI, Caitlin worked at sustainability at ERM Group Company as a sustainability strategy consultant, where she advised clients on their material sustainability issues and developed sustainability strategies and goals. Caitlin also has experience researching materials and product sustainability for Patagonia and advanced corporate sustainability initiatives through roles in both not-for-profit and public sectors. With a strong background in research and communications, She has focused her career on using science-based and business-driven solutions to drive change. Caitlin holds the MESM in Environmental Science and Management from Bren School at the University of California, Santa Barbara, and a BS in Environmental Studies from the University of Southern California. Our next speaker is Josh Jago, who is Marketing Manager, and he is an expert in energy efficient and sustainability focused engineering products with over a decade of experience in the commercial building products and water technology sector. He is a USC MBA, licensed California mechanical engineer, and a former United States Green Building Council, USGBC, Orange County board member. And finally, we move to our moderator, who's also a USC alumna, Ellen Dux, who is our Associate Director at the Office of Sustainability at the University of Southern California. We're so happy to partner with Ellen on this event this evening. Throughout her career, Ellen Dux has developed and led a broad range of sustainability initiatives in the higher education and clean tech industry. Since 2018, Ellen has been Associate Director of the Office of Sustainability at USC. In this role, she works with teams across the university to architect and implement Assignment Earth USC long-range sustainability framework that includes ambitious goals around climate neutrality, zero waste, waste conservation, transportation, electrification, sustainable building construction, and community engagement. And a lot of the events that will be happening next month for Earth Month, we will be including the community in that. It will go beyond the borders of the USC campuses. She also serves on the USC Presidential Working Group on Sustainability and co-chairs the PWG Engagement Committee. Prior to joining USC, this is very interesting, Ellen consulted with the Los Angeles County Chief Sustainability Office, helping to launch the Clean Power Alliance, Southern California first clean energy utility. From 2014 to 2016, she worked with USC and the LA Department of Water and Power on the DOE Smart Grid Regional Demonstration Project. She began her sustainability career working in utility scale PV. Prior to transitioning to sustainability, Ellen held a number of senior positions in, this is very interesting, in the entertainment industry. She went
I was waiting for it, Lori.
Sustainability, including she was executive director of 20th Century Fox's mobile content division. She also co-founded a film entertainment production company with none other than musician Peter Gabriel. I'm a fan.
Yes.
Ellen holds a BA in Foreign Affairs from the University of Virginia and an MBA from the University of Southern California. Please join me in giving a warm virtual USC Trojan welcome to our esteemed alumni panelists and moderator. Ellen?
Right on. Oh my gosh, look how lovely it is to see everybody here tonight. I feel like particularly talking to a group like this that are interested in exploring sustainability careers, finding out more about that. What better cue up is me with my very unusual background of getting into sustainability. And I am here to say, folks, if you think you're interested in working in this space, which is the best space to work in, anybody can do it, because if I can lateral over from being a film producer, I assure you, particularly people who are still in school or recently out of school, you have so much ramp to build a way to find great careers in sustainability. Was not quite so much that case for me roughly 10 years ago when I started working in this space. And I'm super interested to hear about our panelists. That's some of our questions we're going to queue up today, is how did you find your way into these careers and into these spaces? I quite assure you that is sort of a decade, even 8 so years ago, it was not so evident how you could understand an engineer might work in this space or whatever, but it is just exploding right now. And it's such a great time to be thinking about wanting to sort of explore or invent careers in this space. So I guess we're 2 sort of intro questions for our panelists. And thank you everybody for your time for being tonight, and particularly alums who are out and panelists who are willing to spend some time together this evening. Much, much appreciated. We're going to start with Marissa only because you were the one person in your bio who I didn't see where you had a degree in from USC, and I'm assuming maybe law, but I couldn't tell you. So much that's under your umbrella.
Yeah, so my degree is actually in environmental engineering from Viterbi, just before it became or
Yep.
just after. Yeah, so environmental engineering is kind of my background and entree to this world there. So definitely focused on the environmental part of the ES and G.
Right.
Mhm.
And at that time, when you were studying that at Viterbi and thinking about coming out and working in that space, was it before sustainability has sort of grown into this area that we, in a pop culture kind of way, understand today? Was it much more sort of hard engineering driven?
Yeah, no, it was definitely much more hard engineering driven for sure. So I started out, so my Viterbi education was very much, chemicals, processes, drinking water treatment, wastewater treatment, landfill design, that kind of stuff. And my first career out of college did rely more on that, which was I ended up in the remediation profession. So
right.
The crossover between kind of geology and environmental engineering, right? Being able to trace and follow those contaminants that may have leaked out of your tank or whatnot and figure out how they've flown through the environment, moved through groundwater, et cetera. But then also the engineering aspects of being able to, pump that out, run it through a treatment mechanism, and discharge it safely. So that was my entree into the sustainability space.
Yeah.
Was through environmental engineering, and then coming around to my talking about having a kind of a journey into sustainability, right? That was I went from being a consultant in that space to actually being hired by the client. So that's how I ended up working for Boeing.
Yeah.
Being my client to me being the client.
A nice transition.
Other project managers, which is not very nice. And then it was within Boeing as this kind of very big, diverse company that I started to kind of branch out. And so even Boeing itself was going through an evolution of how it used that term sustainability, right?
Right.
Doing an environment report since I want to say something like 2007. So
wow.
They'd been saying how they were performing on certain metrics and, primarily energy, water, and waste related. And, so they started a report way back then. But of course, as I think most folks on this call are probably aware, certainly the professionals and the students may be coming to awareness of, that's been a space that's been evolving a lot over the last 15 years in terms of regulations, in terms of expectations of stakeholders, of investors, of regulators, of everyone. And so, we published our first true sustainability report just 2 years ago.
Wow.
So, we made the transition from an environment report to a sustainability report, and have really been, kind of pulling all of our different, and we at the same time created a centralized sustainability organization. So whereas before it had been, and my early part of my career at Boeing was in their environment, health, and safety group, and that group still exists.
Mm-hmm.
Have a very important focus. But the sustainability group, while is kind of meant to be kind of lean and mighty in terms of serving as this accelerator and integrator across the entire company, because one of the things I think that you'll find is that sustainability is a team sport.
Mm-hmm.
in the sense that
100%.
You're working with everyone across the business. And you don't really want to have this huge top-heavy sustainability pure organization, right? Because then it starts to change the mentality that's incentive
Mm-hmm.
other,
Right.
is not just a part of every aspect of the business.
Yes.
So it's really been cool to be, on a personal, and it just so happens on a professional journey with my company in terms of evolving that and changing that. And so it's been an interesting evolution.
Right. Listen, we're going to jump to Daniel next, but I want to just key in on something that Marissa said that has I've seen happen at USC and in my own career, and I would also then love to hear from the other panelists to see if this is the same. The fact that what Marissa was saying is kind of grew out of an EH&S, environmental health and safety place, which particularly at USC is like kind of a regulatory compliance-based. So it was, environmental reporting. Am I making sure that I'm hitting mandates at a state or global level for Boeing or whatever? And growing from there into a place that is so much more broadly about sustainability as opposed to sort of straight up just compliance work is where I think a lot of this alchemy is happening in this space. And this idea that there's not one team that's the sustainability team. If you're not building it so that everybody understands it's in their workflow, it's in their tasks, it's in part of their job description, then it's not really happening. It like literally has to infuse every crack of what your organization is about. And that's where I think there's tremendous growth opportunity in sustainability careers, as opposed to what Marissa was saying that, 10 years ago, it might have looked like something more one team, heads down, gathering data, reporting it out. That was sort of the way it was thought about. And now it's really exploded into this very different space. Daniel, how about you? How did you find your way into sustainability work? You're coming at it from a finance angle. Can you tell us a little bit about where you started?
Thank you so much, everyone. And I just want to acknowledge the students who are here that, didn't have to be here, but are. And thank you for investing in yourselves and your careers. I actually came from a real estate background, asset management background in the early parts of my career. And at that time, in, I don't know, was this 2005, 6, 7, sustainability was like one of those things that like there might be a recycle basket at the end of the hall that like, ideally put the paper from the printer that you didn't want in the recycle basket. And that was like about the extent of sustainability at that time, I feel like. And it was always it was kind of like diversity inclusion recently, how it's evolved so quickly. Sustainability also was kind of like this nice thing if it makes sense for you today kind of thing. And now it's become, incredible market. I mean, like the renewable energy market is a $2 trillion market right now. Just sort of like business opportunity in the realm of sustainability is really big. And so I started in real estate, and I took a career transition actually through graduate school at USC to work on the sales side of the business. I was in operations and asset management, and I moved over to public relations and marketing for real estate and financial companies. And over time, because I had the financial literacy, I've essentially evolved further and further into actually just business development in finance. And so doing public relations actually was an interesting entree into the business, because when you're in public relations, a big part of your responsibility is promoting corporate social responsibility and ESG initiatives for companies. And so we represented multiple ESG initiatives across various different categories. And so that was an easy transition for me to then work in finance in an area in which promoted a circular economy. And so that's what I do now. And so that's a little bit of my trajectory.
Okay, so that's interesting to me. And again, so I'm going to try and make bridges here for folks who are maybe younger in their careers or still students and thinking about building out careers. What I find interesting about what Daniel just said is this sort of two-way street. What we often say to students is whatever skill set you're learning in university, you can take it out to a career path and find your way into sustainability space. Take that finance background that you have, take that engineering background you have, take that comms background that you're learning, take that marketing, and you can really, it's such a big tent now. All of these things have room to play in a sustainability career space. But when Daniel is saying that he got the sort of fluency and he was able to kind of command the language and knew enough about the issues that you almost took it back, like it pushed you into other places in your career that you could grow from sustainability, because it's becoming high level enough, I think, within big enterprise. You're not so sort of siloed into, well, you're coming over the EH&S team. Oh, okay. Like it played at a certain level at an enterprise in my experience and didn't necessarily get much higher into the organization 10 years ago. And now it's so touching all parts of companies at a high enough level that it can push you into taking under things, other sort of bits of a company under your portfolio. So I think that's a really exciting space that this is. I would not have guessed that was going to be the case when Office of Sustainability was super siloed in EH&S at USC 10 years ago. And people were like, well, why would you need to report up at a higher level? Just make sure this reporting is done and don't bother people was kind of the vibe then.
Add just one quick
yes, go please.
on that is it's largely driven by consumer demand. So
That's exactly right.
what's going on is there has been in the last 5-ish years a transfer of wealth from baby boomers to millennials. So there's like 30 trillion in transfer of wealth between those two demographics, and the millennials desire sustainability as a part of their mandate for everything, whether it's consumer or investor, corporate behavior. And so that's really been a catalyst in a big way. The other thing that's going on is that where we went from all the blue chip corporations were like your Coca-Colas and your Exxon Mobils, that's transitioned into like big tech, like your Facebooks and your Metas and your Googles. What's going on right now is that engineers, to your point, who got engineering degrees and they wanted to work for big tech because they wanted to save the world and they wanted to create new innovative ideas, realized, wow, these are like advertising companies actually. And so what you're seeing is a huge movement of engineering and technical capacities that have gone over to renewable energy and some other forms of like sustainability business.
Right.
There's just in general a huge movement in this space.
Yeah. I'm here for it, dude. Super exciting, really. And so Josh and Caitlin, maybe Caitlin most because everybody's loving probably the brands that you've worked for, and they're like couldn't be more hot in this space right now. But wait, I was just going to say one more thing to Daniel's point. It's neither here nor there, but it's about the weird lateral transition from being a film producer, working in entertainment, and finding your way into sustainability. 8 years ago or so, I would have loved to have thought that I could have made that career pivot by staying within studio, right? That's where I was at studio. I had worked hard in a film career to sort of get to that point where I was in big studios in entertainment. And there was nothing like that. Like there was no job that I could find at Fox or at Disney or at Netflix or whatever that was sustainability anything. And I'm telling you, I really looked. I was not so much eager to get out of entertainment. I was just eager to get into sustainability. And I thought it would be there. And now it's like everywhere I go, I meet, 5 levels deep, people who do sustainability work at Netflix, Disney, Fox. Like it makes me sad. That was not a part of where my journey could be, but it's part of where y'all's journey could be, which is super exciting. All right, Josh, we're going to go to Caitlin next, and then we're going to close that up with Josh. Caitlin, talk about how did you find your way into your career? Talk about working for these great brands you're at.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say I've probably followed the most traditional path. I mean, I knew I wanted to study environmental science under USC. Yeah. But that was mostly just because I'm really passionate about it. I saw an inconvenient truth when I was 11 and I was like, this is what I'm meant to do. But I didn't really know what a career looked like at the time. I was mostly being pushed into environmental health and safety and nonprofit work just because that was all that we were told was out there.
That's right.
So when I forget what year it was though, I never saw myself as a business student, didn't venture anywhere near Marshall. But I did take a class with Professor Adler, which was a business and the environment or something like that. And that class kind of changed my life. I was like,
wow. All right, I got to tell Paul Adler that. I see him in meetings multiple times per week. I will tell him that you said that. That is so wonderful.
And a whole new perspective, because I was at that point planning on going into government. I thought, regulation and lawmaking was what I wanted to do. But I could see that business could really have a significant impact. If you could get senior leadership on board, they could snap their fingers and suddenly an entire industry is changed. So that kind of lit the flame for me. But at that point, still, I didn't really know what kind of jobs are out there. So I started in nonprofit work. It wasn't really the right fit for me. And I was like, okay, well, I still like doing this, but maybe this just isn't the right job. And then I moved into government. I worked for the San Francisco Department of the Environment. Again, I had friends that loved working there, but government wasn't quite right for me. But I was starting to interact in sort of a public-private partnerships role. And I was realizing that, okay, maybe I want to explore private sector. But the jobs that I was seeing were either 3 to 5 years of experience in private sector or a master's degree equivalent. So at that point, I knew I wanted to go to school eventually and study something in a little bit more detail. And I thought, okay, maybe this is my time to really brush up on my skills. I was looking at the job descriptions and what were the kind of things they were asking for, if it was life cycle assessment, carbon accounting, sustainability reporting. And I was like, okay, I'm going to use my time in my master's degree to really learn these skills. So then when I get out into the job market, I can say I have experience doing all of these things. And that's what I did. I ended up getting an internship with Patagonia, where I was looking at their materials sustainability, and how we could reduce emissions through product. After that, I went into working in sustainability strategy consulting, which was really great. I know sometimes there's some scary reputations in the consulting world. Some of it's true, depending on the firm, but it gives you a really great breadth of experience across industries.
That's true.
At that point, I was primarily in consumer products, but this gave me sustainability in healthcare and tech and biopharma and all these industries I never worked in. So just challenging my brain into thinking, what are the sustainability topics that are most important for a tech company versus a pet food company? Like, where are they really wanting to focus their strategies? And then that led me to my current role at Williams-Sonoma. So I work on that strategy across all of our brands, West Elm, Pottery Barn, Williams-Sonoma, and taking that consulting experience and being able to then translate what I was doing on the consulting side into my in-house position. So I think all of that is just to say it's okay if it takes time to really hone in on what you like doing. It's okay to identify the things you don't like doing too.
Right.
All of it will just help you to be even more selective in getting to that initial job that's really going to.
Exactly. We talk about that a lot, this idea that there's this pyramid, right? And it narrows as you go up. And so really, I think just as critical of identifying what you like or what you're good at is identifying what you really don't like and would love to not have to do for the bulk of your career. And the idea that, I'm just sort of adding up years and thinking, you are X amount younger than I am. The fact that there was that many choices, like you were like, oh, I could try something in government. I could try something in nonprofit. I could do NGO. I could eventually go over to brands, to enterprise, again, that richness wasn't so available 10, 15 years
now, since when I did that a couple of years ago.
I mean,
more. It's really
so
exciting.
much more opportunity. And to your point, also so much, I think, but we'll do, after we do Josh, we'll do a second round of questions to the four of you. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. I think more ways for folks to get in at a junior level. So to Caitlin's point, when it was like, must have a master's, already looking for 5 years experience. And like, how do you get that when you're just right out of school? The idea now that there are, I think, more genuine sort of entry-level ways to come into this work is a great and exciting time. Josh, I'm so sorry you were not intended to be last in this round of questions, but tell us, how did you get going with it all?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I'm very happy to be here. And I think my path to sustainability is a lot like the other folks up here. As a mechanical engineer going into the workforce, there was no sustainability job title at the time. This is looking at past over a decade now. And so I essentially started with the implementation of engineered products into the built environment, really. So these are large capital projects, central plants. And you have to understand in the built environment, energy, like 30 to 40% of the energy consumed is consumed by these products. So every time you can introduce something that's new or that's more energy efficient, can provide value to not only the occupants, but in some way the world. And one of the things that I'll comment on as my career progressed is I really spent a lot of time and energy on energy efficiency in probably the first 3 to 5 years of my career. But what really I started to see, because I worked with a lot of, I was on the implementation side, so a lot of different manufacturers at the time, you get to see a lot of water conservation become a really big, important piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
Because a lot of these, central plant projects consume a lot of water, and a lot of people they don't even think about it, right? And across my career, I had the opportunity to probably work with every major facility owner, every name brand you can think of, and really when you get in there and you start thinking like, hey, every company in Southern California or, across the West Coast for me at this point is consuming energy and water in every single aspect of their business. And there's always a product making that consumption. So when you flip back over to where I'm at now on the manufacturing side, how do we produce products that consume less energy, less water? They measure their consumption. And when we're making those products, how do we produce less waste? How do we make those products with less energy and less water? And to me, that's really the heart of what sustainability is all about, is how can we institute long-term thinking into every aspect of our lives and our business. And if you carry that thread with you and that flag into your any part of what you do at work, you're a sustainability professional.
That's right.
And so that's where I kind of land today. Is I mean, I can get into what sustainability means at the engineering level, but the reality is that anytime you go into any Fortune 500 company today, you're going to start to see more and more companies thinking about long-term thinking, and that shows up in a lot of different ways. There's a lot of new job titles today that I've seen my peers fall into, either in real estate being VPs of sustainability, or in manufacturing VPs of sustainability, or working in supply chain, introducing WASH initiatives so that the suppliers of the products globally are meeting, our kind of idea of long-term thinking that we're kind of focused on today. So
Josh is a little bit speaking my language. Well, he's speaking my language way better than I can speak my language, which is to say, for folks who were here right at the top of the meeting, Josh, I was saying that the Office of Sustainability at USC, our swim lane, if you will, is sort of built environment and operations. So, but over to Marissa's point, which is to say, it says Office of Sustainability is quite small and a quite big organization, and we don't really hold any of the actual levers of driving energy, wastewater, transportation, procurement change, right? They don't live in my team. I don't have hundreds of people and a giant budget. They live siloed sort of in all of these other teams. So facilities management, construction, and so a lot of the work of sustainability is reaching out to those colleagues where they are, figuring out ways to partner with them. They've already got their day jobs, and they may be working for corporations that are not quite so evolved yet to say, yes, we see it, we identified it, it's an absolute, so how do you bring them along the continuum? A lot of, USGBC, a lot of, oh, you're not even quite sure what that looks like. Let me help you get educated to what these issues are. And it's a long process, right? And that's how you eventually move the needle for big organizations that may be a little in US. I think I'm not telling any tales out of school. 5 years ago, USC was pretty behind the curve with a lot of sustainability play. If you benchmarked us against any of our near peers, we were a decade behind. It just was not work that we had picked up to do. Whereas a lot of schools had, you see Santa Barbara being one of them, were just way out there, like doing, amazing work. And some of that has to do with us being a private school instead of a state school. So we weren't sort of mandated to do some things in the way that state schools are. But this work around built environment and operations and driving it to that sort of level for the folks who do own those budgets and own those tasks and own those projects, and to sort of say, this is what the work has to look like. And you might not be ready to hear it this year, and you might not be tasked or budgeted to do it even next year, but by 2 or 3 years out, we have a sustainability plan at USC now that is calling for climate neutrality by 2025. And we're gonna hit that one. The more challenging one is going to be zero waste by 2028, because that's just a crazy aggressive goal with a lot of moving parts. But I'd love to hear Josh talk about what his sort of background was, because I very much key into a lot of that. That feels very familiar to the work we do. And Josh, I will say I don't think we've broken ground yet, but USC is officially doing our first LEED Platinum building, and part of our new President Fult, who has been our sustainability champion when she started with us a couple of years ago and identified sustainability as one of the core strategic priorities of her presidency, which is super exciting and also completely overwhelming for a school that had never really done much about sustainability. So our colleagues over at the facilities team just put out a sustainability design guidelines. So for all future construction and all major renovations, they will adhere to these sustainability design guidelines, nothing less than LEED Platinum from here on out. In some cases, pushing even beyond that. So like real sea change, that was not the way USC, and that's going to be a Viterbi building. It's going to be a comp sci building, actually, this first one that's going to go.
Ellen, you just touched on a couple of things that I just think are so great.
Bring it, Marissa. Well, so now we're going to go backwards around the loop again and bring it.
Part of what sustainability professionals do oftentimes is they're bringing their flashlight, right? And they're shining a light on certain things, right? And
yep.
And they're really helping the system understand, to comments that Josh mmade about like the long-term implications of right? You build a building, you build a cooling tower, you set up your HVAC system. That is going to be there for a long
for
time.
So long. That's going to be there for so long.
The cheapest moment to do sustainable design is at the beginning.
Mhm. So true.
Um,
We
and-
have buildings on our campus, as y'all know, and sorry to interrupt you quickly, Marissa, but this is where I get super passionate. Everybody here has spent time on campus. So we have buildings that are still actually 100 years old, maybe even older. So yeah, and to Josh's point earlier about, water suddenly sort of coming up strong as the most maybe constrained resource that we have imminently in Southern California. Not that you would know from this winter, but I think we all sort of get it. So we have these huge chiller tanks, these huge water. There's apparently like 1 million, 2 million gallon tank under Cromwell Field, because that's how we were sort of working our cooling system. Guess what? That which was put in, I think in the 90s and was super state of the art. And wow, this amazing huge tank, and it's going to be. And now water's the issue, right? So what are we going to do with the tank with that we can't really necessarily keep filling for 2 million gallons or however many? Josh is like, it's not 2 million gallons. Ellen, you don't know what you're talking about. But it's interesting to say, to Marissa's point, this road is long, and it's really critical that you're thinking about these things at the beginning of these projects, because anything retrofitting is just awful. All right,
Yeah.
so projecting out, and Marissa, let's stay with you for a second. So now we know how folks have gotten into their careers and what did it look like when we all started out. Where do we see these things growing to? Either your career or your teams at your particular companies, or just more broadly speaking, if we're surprised where sustainability is now compared to 10 years ago, where do you imagine these collective careers are going to be growing to?
I think what's going to get more and more interesting is how much we integrate it deeper and deeper into all the various aspects of the business, right? So a common business term around Boeing, at least, is KPIs, right? So key performance indicators, right? So everybody wants to be successful in their job. And in olden days, right, it might have just been like money, money, money all the time. And it's still, let's be clear, that's still a loud voice.
Yeah, we didn't throw that out as a KPI necessarily.
Yeah, but it's also it's an important part of the story that we get to tell, right? And that we get to encourage and set those right incentives up for the system, right?
Mm-hmm.
That it touched on. I think it was Daniel mentioned, kind of that longer term thinking, right? Is that okay? We'll set your KPI up for not like, how did I build the cheapest building this year? But I'm gonna have to pay to operate that building year after year after year. And it represents an expense for me.
Yep.
So making sure that the right incentives are built into the right groups so that they are able to, so this is to reuse the word again, so that it becomes a sustainable process within the business, right?
Mm-hmm.
Feeds off of itself. It's giving the right feedback cues of like, oh, okay, this is going off the rails in terms of it's using more energy, or we have an ordering or a supply chain process where we got too much of that. How do we figure out those signals earlier? And so I mean, in a way, those were always things that business was watching, in inventory management, things like that. But this provides an extra element to it in terms of able to maybe give a little extra emphasis, being able to, and it's important for us as sustainability professionals to be able to tell the full kind of business story, right?
Yeah.
I had some extra and I had to throw it away, and that's not good, right? Hurt your trash numbers, but it's also, you had to buy that stuff up front, and that had a cost, and so being able to tell that complete story and really bring that all together. And that's truly what kind of I view sustainability as, is this just kind of great integrator role at companies, where and the key to it is to make it work. It's almost like you're trying to, even though this is going to sound strange, but it's almost like you're trying to work yourself out of a job. Right? Like you're trying to make it so that it's sustainable. Like it's the wheels are turning with the right decision-making cues on their own, because like you were saying, right, sustainability tends to be a smaller organization, so you've got to kind of go into these other organizations, facilities, supply chain, and be able to kind of help them, work with them, and set up these systems that are going to have the right incentives in place. And I think it's been an interesting journey too for a lot of companies, where I think one of the other panelists mentioned, that millennials really care. I think it was Daniel, it was you, was talking about, millennials really caring about environment, right? It's a big part of the competition for talent, right? Come work for my company.
Yeah.
Are this, right?
Right.
And feels that too, right? I mean, they need the best and brightest engineers, in many spaces. And so they have to, that element of desirability of recruitment is definitely, part
Mhm.
of the story. So
Yeah. We're going to go over to Daniel, but I would want to just throw this out for folks to kind of think about and chew on, because I found this to be very exciting. And Esther and Lori were actually at this panel that I was on maybe about a month ago with Deloitte. So Deloitte came into Marshall School, and long story short, what they were sort of getting at was like, we're not going to be able to find enough really high talent, high qualified people to fill the amount of jobs, we being Deloitte, this is what they were saying in the panel, the amount of jobs that are like the tsunami that is coming of people coming out of top schools like USC, ready to hit the job market in, broadly speaking, sustainability, whether in your marketing and communications, whether you're the one who's the storyteller, figuring out how to communicate all of this, sometimes really deep data, dry kind of stuff, and lift it up and sort of get people inspired, whether you're coming in as an engineer, whether you're coming in as art, that's what Deloitte as consultants, part of what they do is like forecast out on behalf of their clients. Oh my God, there's a pipeline and we're not going to be able to fill it. And Deloitte in particular, being consultants, were like, okay, literally, how are we going to get enough talent in-house to do the kind of work that Caitlin was saying when she was first coming out and working as a consultant? Those can be really sort of stressful jobs that sometimes are a lot of hours, and you move around, get great experience, you move across industries often. But they were like, at the end of the day with this panel, what they were sort of talking about is like, how are we making partnerships with schools like USC, top schools like USC, to make sure that we're identifying students getting the right academic backgrounds, right internships or whatever, so that we know we can help fill this pipeline, because otherwise we are staring at a real hole in a way that we need to be able to service our clients and bill our clients, right? That's a big part of it for a consultant. And I just thought that was so fascinating. Like, if there is anybody who's probably a little bit more just like, no, we're here to make the business happen, it's a Deloitte-like company. And they recognize this as like, oh gosh, we got to figure out how to get more of these people into these jobs. Daniel, what do you think? If you're projecting ahead, where do you think this is all growing?
Thank you so much for that question. The one thing that I've told students for a long time, and it still remains very true, is a lot of times when we're coming out of school, and when I was in school, we often think about like, what are we inspired to do, or what lights us up, and
right.
I want to go do that. But a lot of times it's a little general. Like when I was an undergrad, I just wanted to save the world.
I just wanted to make movies. That's all I wanted.
But where it's really helpful is to take that, what inspires you, and find where is there market demand. Where is there a size of a market there where there's enough for everybody to eat from. And I think that's what's going on in the clean technology, in the sustainability market right now. I mean, one of the biggest policy initiatives of last year was the bipartisan bill. That's the Inflation Reduction Act, essentially brought in about $738 billion in investment to help address core areas, which included about, I think it was like somewhere around like almost 400 billion for, renewable energy and things
Mm-hmm.
that vehicles and all this. One of the biggest things what's going on right now is that the consumer demand that we've been speaking about, for example, electric cars, we don't have enough energy to actually supply the demand for electric cars. So there's what's going on is that the bigger problem is we don't have the minerals to actually do energy development. So like conflict minerals and all the big challenges around minerals is a big topic. So there's a lot of complex challenges, and those mean jobs, those mean problem solving, those mean market size. And so, I mean, we see a huge opportunity. We've gotten very busy in the last 18 months coming out of the pandemic, just in the fact that like, this is the area in which we're building our country, and infrastructure is a big part of it. That's also a global market. I mean, one of the things I loved about USC when I went there is we're one of the largest enrollers of international students in the world. And I imagine everyone who's on this panel has the great fortune to connect with people from all over the world at school. And so there's a global market that we all have access to. What that also means, though, is you're competing against the global market for jobs. So, and so many jobs are remote or hybrid now, so you can literally work all around the world as long as you're willing to wake up at that hour. So, you know, there continues to be a high growth rate. I mean, like I had some of my associates pull some numbers. Even in sub-Saharan Africa, we're experiencing like a crazy growth rate in terms of renewable energy markets, a $90 billion market, and all across Latin America, also a huge growth market. I mean, the growth projections across the world in terms of just like sustainability careers is really big. So now's the time, is the right time. What I would encourage as just a quick final point is really get good at specialization and metrics. You know what area do you want to specialize in, and then how do you measure your contribution in that area? Yep. Because that really helps other people help you. That helps you help yourself, and provide some clarity. Because if you just say, "Hey, I want to be in sustainability," there's so many different verticals and lanes you could run in there, and it's helpful for people who want to help you, like us, to get career positions and things of that nature, to know a little bit more in terms of what specifically you do want to be in. And there's a lot of ways you could skin that, or you could break that down. So
I totally agree. And, you know, Caitlin, Josh, we're going to probably come back to you again last, because I want to take it over to Caitlin, because it sounds like Caitlin was very thoughtful about this in her early days of coming out, figuring out what didn't work for her, but knowing she had to get some deeper grounding. And I think that point is really valid, and not to draw, like, again, a parallel to the entertainment industry, but similar, right? Like, a lot of people want to work in that space, and you sort of get a ton of students around springtime. Oh, do I want to work? Can I have an internship? Can I have an informational interview? And what, over the years of working in that space, I would always say to people, everybody wants to help somebody. It's sort of like innately true about human nature. It's a really weird person who's like, I don't want to help you. But people are busy. And so what they often can't do is like sit endlessly with you and be like, well, and let's talk about it some more. So I was like, cue it up for me. Be specific, do your work ahead of time, and tell me where's your entry point? What's interesting to you? Not the actual job number necessarily, but if you cue it up for me, I will of course send that email to my friend at the other studio. I would of course make that call. Like, people, it's like a great thing about being social animals. We mostly want to do that for each other. We definitely want to do that for each other in the Trojan Network. So having spent a little bit of time doing that thinking, maybe trying an internship, doing some reading, do any or all of that research, I think would get you further down the road and trying to get pinpointed about where you want to kind of surgically insert into this. And as somebody who did not, despite an MBA, have an incredible amount of confidence around numbers in general, KPIs, measuring things, data, that wasn't my bag. To Daniel's point, I would say, find your way to get comfortably fluid, at least talking about those kinds of things, because I definitely came in sort of like a storyteller, marketing, finding ways to elevate things around, creatively, and very quickly realized even I was going to have to get a pretty decent understanding of those kinds of things I was creatively talking about and making pretty pictures behind and all that kind of stuff. Greenwashing is real. People sniff that out very quickly. So you want to just get down, hunker down. If that's not where you normally go with your brain, get comfortable with going there a little bit more. It will be worth your while down the path. Caitlin, tell us a little bit about where you think.
Yeah, that's actually.
You came with such a great background already. Where are you going to fly this to?
Yeah, no, a great building point for me on the greenwashing side there. I see two kind of directions, and it all comes down to more stringency, regulation, people digging into your claims more. If we're talking on the finance side, we're going to be needing to include our greenhouse gas emissions in our financial filings. And I'm not an accountant, but I'm working increasingly more with the finance and accounting folks, internal audit, on how do we get our data to the level and rigor of being in a financial filing.
Yeah.
If it's a company that's doing business in Europe, there's tons of regulation in the EU in terms of your reporting, tracing your products all the way down to their raw material origin. So there's a lot of great tech companies that are coming onto the space now for raw materials traceability. on the greenwashing space, that is a very hot topic right now in the consumer products. And we have to be able to provide the science to back up any of these claims that you're making. So all of that is to say, those are jobs that are not necessarily the sustainability team. That's the marketing team. That's the internal audit team. That's the finance team. So those folks need to also upskill themselves on sustainability. As all of the panelists have said so far, we are educators and influencers on a lot of these topics. We can teach as much as we can, but some of these folks are going to have to take that on themselves. So those are just a few things that I think illustrate how other teams are going to be taking up these topics. And just one more throw in just to make it interesting.
I used to work in film. Go ahead.
Biodiversity is also coming up as a new topic, which I think is really great, and how businesses can tie biodiversity to financial impact. So our definition of sustainability is ever growing. So
yeah, right. It's like, it's kind of fluid. It's fascinating. It's also challenging and sometimes slightly contentious to define it, literally to define it. It is not a moving target to say that as a negative. It's a moving target because our understanding of it is growing, and it's growing really rapidly, and different models for thinking about it. And you think you've got it, and you're trying to get consensus, and you're trying to get buy-in across, in our case, the university, and people are like, well, why not this? And also, why not that? And you're like, oh my gosh, it is literally everybody's job. All right, Josh is going to bring us home. And then I know you guys are going to do breakouts, and my dad is in town, so I'm taking my dad to dinner. I will not be breaking out with any of you. But Josh, where do you see it all growing to?
Yeah, so I mean, I think just to sum up what all these wonderful folks are saying is that sustainability is going to be a piece of your career. I'd say every single successful, and I'm going to use the keyword here, promotable successful person who's going to rise in a complex organization is going to be 10 to 15% sustainable.
Wow,
and they're going to have to be able
to hear that. That's amazing.
And I can probably provide an example across every major functional area where sustainability is becoming more important to the business because the cultures of companies are shifting, because their ability, and speaking to Daniel's point, it's these cultures are being driven by demand. They're being driven by the market, and people want to see companies reflect their own values. And to get there, we need to have professionals that are capable and fluent in the specification language of sustainability, as well as the ability to measure and verify. And I think that as time goes on, you're going to see more and more folks become fluent in sustainability. And those that choose to, I'd say, focus on sustainability from whatever path they come in on. And I think there's a lot of different directions you can come in. Primarily, they're going to be looking at the job market and their ability to prioritize goals for companies, no matter what they're doing, building products or otherwise, because when you look at you give 1,000 people and say, hey, let's have a sustainable project, you're going to get 100 ideas. And a good sustainable professional is going to be able to prioritize those, the most benefit to the organization and the rest of their stakeholders. So that's where I see the focus moving forward. And there's a lot of great opportunity there. I think that you could probably join any organization today and find a path towards sustainability. But there's some organizations that are a little further along. So that's where.
And I loved that you said promotable careers, because there's lots of careers out there. There's lots of industries out there. Everybody here is talented. Everybody here is smart. Everybody here is going to find their way into the workforce. But if this is interesting to you, believe when you're hearing from folks who are a little bit further down the road, like we see where it's going, and no joke, like everybody is going to be doing sustainability work in some part of their job going forward. And so y'all already thinking about it and trying to figure out how to sort of get on that curve earlier is so smart. So we're 3 minutes short here before I'm going to say my goodbyes, but I'm going to put a few more things in chat. One is, I don't think that alum can be a part of this, but I'm offering this to everybody here who's a current USC student. Office of Sustainability earlier this year started something called the SUP date. So I just put the hot link there in chat. So it's a Slack workspace that's student curated. Actually, one of my student interns runs it. It's probably got about 1,100 students on it now. And it's very specifically a dedicated pipeline for like opportunities. Did you hear about an internship? Did you hear about job? Like that kind of stuff comes into me often. And we have social media. Oh, and by the way, so this is easy to remember. So y'all could just go there on your own. Sustainability.usc.edu. That's your website, folks. Go there. It is chock full of everything about sustainability at USC. There's whole tabs that are just for if you're a student, how you can get involved, what you can do. But that SUPdate was meaning to be a space, student to student communication, because we all hear about things and yet we're so moving fast and we're deeply siloed. And even if you, and I hope you do, sign up for all of our social media, you can find us on Twitter, TikTok, whatever, it's all there, but we couldn't keep up, right? We're just constantly being inundated because we're a great school. People want to know, want to get our students involved. And like a huge chunk of my job was just like trying to email out, hello, ESA, Environmental Student Assembly, here's an opportunity to share with your student. And I was like, we can't, this is so inefficient. We can't do this anymore. So the SUPdate was born in September. It's going like gangbusters. Get in there, check it out. If you're hearing about things, put it in there, check to see, like, it's got a lot of some paid summer internships in there right now. So the SUPdate is for you. And then I think Lori was saying at 7 o'clock, stop. So I'm going to stop in one more minute, but if y'all don't mind, we're going to say thank yous and goodbyes in 1 second, but I'm going to ask you to do the Office of Sustainability and Sustainability at USC a favor. I'm going to put a link into chat right now. 2 days ago, USC opened our annual sustainability survey. It's going to be online until April 16th-ish. Faculty, students, and staff. So again, sorry, alums, not for y'all at this point. And it's a big deal for us. It's part of this sort of KPI reporting. It's a way that on a year-over-year basis, we sort of measure against baseline, how much progress are we making, not around like physical built environment KPIs, but how much are we evolving faculty and students and staff on our campus into becoming what I like to call a sustainable Trojan. They have a base understanding about what sustainability is. They understand how they can be impactful in sustainability behaviors. They understand what the university's trying. It's like 10 minutes or less. You have a chance to win $100 gifts. Last year, we got about 6,000 responses. We want to beat that this year. So I'm going to put it in chat right now. If you all somewhere in this evening to take that survey, that would be a huge help to the Office of Sustainability. And with that, I will say thank you, everybody, for showing up tonight. Thank you for caring enough about your careers, about the future of the planet. Extra thank you to our panelists. This was great. I would love to connect with any or all of you again in other places. We're on campus. You can find us. You can find me at Dukes at usc.edu. So DUX at usc.edu if you want to reach out directly. And Lori or Esther, should I just bow out?
So thank you so much to our panelists, our alumni panelists, and to Ellen for navigating our discussion and being our expert in residence to have the rich discussion that needs to happen. So now we have another hour of our program where it's going to be more interactive, more organic. We have additional alumni that are part of this particular event, and they're going to be in their respective breakout rooms.